Arr! Hey, welcome back to our Armor of God series where we are looking at the book of Ephesians and where Paul talks about the armor of God and we're equating it to pirate stuff. So today we are looking at the shield of faith as the piece of the armor and we're equating it to an eye patch that a pirate would wear. So let's read out of Ephesians about the shield of faith. It says these words. It says, in addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. You see, it's interesting because Paul doesn't always go into detail about each of the parts of the armor. Sometimes he just says, put on this or put on that. In this case, he says, use the shield of faith, and this is what you use it for. You extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. So, what does a shield do? A shield protects. You know, in the Roman world, a shield was a really big part of your armor because it not only protected you, but if you stood in a formation with a lot of other people that had shields ready, you could protect each other. So not only was it used for your own personal protection, but it could be used to protect other people as well. A shield is important because you can stop things from happening to you. So this shield of faith is something that we should put on every day. But what is faith? Well, I'm going to go to the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, and I'm going to read a definition, and then we're going to continue on in chapter 11 there in Hebrews to talk about our main Bible point for today. So in Hebrews chapter 11, it says these words. It says, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. Now, by faith, we understand the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. So, being sure of what we hope for, this idea of faith means that we expect it, even though we don't see it. We don't see God, but we expect that God will be the same God that we see throughout all of Scripture. We have faith. And we put our faith in God, knowing that He will do the things that He says He will do. It's sure. We expect it to happen. So we are going to look at the life of Abraham today, and that's going to tell us a little bit about faith. Abraham was a man of faith, and let's look at what it says here. It says, starting with verse 8, again out of chapter 11, by faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive his inheritance, he obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents. He did as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him in the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with the foundations, whose architect was the builder, God. And by faith, even Abraham, even though that he was past age and Sarah herself was barren, was able to become a father because he considered him faithful and made him a promise. And so, from one man, as good as dead, came the descendants as numerous as the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. See, Abraham was a man who had faith in God. God told him a couple things that seemed crazy, sounded impossible, but he did it, and he had faith that God was going to follow through on his promises. One was leaving the place that he grew up, his hometown, and God said, get up and leave and go to a place I'm going to show you. But he didn't tell Abraham where that was. Abraham did exactly that. He got all of his things, he left his hometown, and he followed God's instructions to the land that God was going to show him, to the land that God was going to set aside for Abraham. And another part, Abraham was an old man, and yet God chose that old man to start his entire nation of Israel. Now, at an old age, you don't see a lot of grandparents have babies, do you? Well, Abraham had a child at the age of 100. Yeah, pretty amazing. Now, again, by what you and I understand, that's almost impossible. That's near impossible. That's only going to be able to happen if God intervenes. And that's what happened. God is faithful, and he showed Abraham that he could be trustworthy and that Abraham could put his faith in God. So what does that mean for you and me? Well, it means the same thing. We can put our faith and our trust and our hope in God. And we put that on every day as a part of our armor. So how does that do with an eye patch? What does that do with an eye patch? Well, you see, a pirate uses it for protection for his eye. Now, there are a couple different things that people think that an eye patch is for, or why a pirate would wear an eye patch. Some people think, they all have hooks, and they, try to, fix something on their hair or do something, and they poke their eye out. And so they don't have an eye, and that's why they wear an eye patch. Or sometimes, you see a lot of sword fights and things like that in battles, and they did. They had a lot of battles at sea. But that's not why, because they lost their eye in battle. What it's used for is for a very simple reason, to be able to see. Now, it seems kind of strange, right? Why would you put an eye patch so that you could see better? Well, here's the reason. Right now, I have my patch on my right eye on your left side of your screen. Now, what that means is that when I am in the light here, I can see out of this eye really well. Now, what happens is if I go into a dark room, it takes some time for my eyes to adjust and focus so that I can see in the dark. Have you ever done that before? Have you ever walked into a really dark place after being in a really light place and have a really hard time trying to focus in on what's going on? You can't see in the dark, but after maybe a minute or two, your eyes kind of adjust and you can see better. Well, that's what this is for. See, what happens is they would be above deck where it would be extremely bright in that sun, and when they would go below the deck, it would be dark. So what they would do is this. They would take their eye patch and they'd switch it over so that this eye that was in the dark could see a lot better. And that they could see below deck and continue with their work. And that when that was adjusted, then they could go outside and they could do the whole process again, because this eye is now in the dark. All right, so this week I want you to think about your faith, the shield of faith. Think about how much faith do you have in God. If God asked you to do something crazy like he did to Abraham, do you think you'd do it? Well, think about it. So, guys, thanks a lot, and I hope you guys are having fun with this series. I am, and I'll see you guys next time.